I never thought I'd become the kind of person who would lock someone in a cage. But after months of dealing with the neighborhood HOA queen, sometimes even the most patient people reach their breaking point. This is the story of how I finally stood up to the woman who thought she owned everything, including my land. Before you watch full story, comment down your country name. I would love to hear from you. It all started 6 months ago when I inherited my grandfather's ranch on the outskirts of Silver Creek. 20 beautiful acres of land with a small creek running through it, a modest 2-bedroom house, and a barn that had seen better days. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, the only thing I had left of my grandfather who raised me after my parents passed. The ranch sat at the edge of the new Whispering Pines housing development, where houses cost more than I'd make in 10 years. When my grandfather bought the land 30 years ago, there was nothing but open country for miles. Now, expensive homes pressed right up against the northern edge of my property. I moved in on a Saturday morning in April, my old pickup truck loaded with the few possessions I had. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was compared to my apartment in the city. Birds singing, the creek gurgling in the distance, a light breeze through the pine trees. It felt like coming home. That peace lasted exactly 2 days. Monday morning, I was drinking coffee on my porch when I spotted a woman walking her dog across my field. Not on the edge, not accidentally crossing a corner, she was a good 100 yards onto my property, following what looked like a well-worn path. I put down my coffee and walked toward her. She was about 50 with expensive-looking blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing bright yellow athletic wear that probably cost more than all the clothes I own put together. Her small white dog was off-leash running through my field. "Excuse me," I called out when I got close enough. "I think you might be on private property." The woman looked at me like I was something her dog had dragged in. "I walk here every morning," she said, as if that explained everything. "Well, this is private property," I explained. "I just moved in and—" "You must be the new owner," she interrupted. "I'm Diane Wilson, head of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. This path has been used by our residents for years. It's a community trail." I tried to stay polite. "My grandfather always said you catch more flies with honey than vinegar." "I understand, but this is private property, not part of your development. There's no easement or public access agreement." Diane's smile tightened. "Young man, this trail has been used by our community since before you were born. We have an understanding." "I'm sorry, but I don't have any understanding with anyone. This is my property." She pulled out her phone and took a picture of me. "What's your name?" "Jack Mitchell." "Why are you taking my picture?" "The HOA board will want to know who's causing problems." "It's easier if we all get along, Jack." The way she said my name made it sound like a threat. As she walked away, her dog ran over and peed on a fence post. She didn't bother to call him back. That was my introduction to Diane Wilson, the woman who would make the next few months of my life a living hell. The next day, I found 3 more residents walking across my property. When I politely asked them to leave, they mentioned Diane had told them about the trail and their right to use it. By the end of the week, there were dog walkers, joggers, and even mothers pushing strollers through my field every day. I put up "No trespassing" signs. They disappeared overnight. I called the local sheriff's office, but they seemed reluctant to get involved. "Civil matter," the deputy said. "If there's been an established use for years, it gets complicated." Frustrated, I consulted a lawyer who specialized in property rights. She confirmed what I already knew: without an easement on the deed, they had no right to cross my land. She suggested starting with a formal letter to the HOA, then building a fence if that didn't work. I sent the letter, certified mail with signature required. A week later, I received a response on HOA letterhead. It was short and direct. "The trail across your property has been in continuous use for over 7 years, establishing a prescriptive easement. Any attempt to block access will result in legal action. We suggest you cooperate with community standards." It was signed by Diane Wilson, HOA president. My lawyer read it and laughed. "They're bluffing. Your grandfather owned this land for 30 years and never granted an easement. They can't just create one because they want it. But be prepared, HOAs can be very aggressive." She wasn't wrong. The day after I sent a response denying their claims, I found my mailbox smashed. 2 days later, someone removed my gate from its hinges and threw it in the creek. When I installed security cameras, they were spray-painted black within 24 hours. Each time I reported the vandalism, the sheriff's deputy would take notes and promise to look into it, but nothing ever happened. I began to suspect that someone in the department had connections to Whispering Pines. In a small town like Silver Creek, it wouldn't be surprising. The final straw came when I discovered someone had cut my fence line in 3 places. Not just cut it but rolled it back to create obvious pathways. That was expensive damage and it was clearly deliberate. I decided it was time to get serious about protecting my property. My grandfather had built a large animal enclosure years ago when he raised goats. It was about 20 feet square, made of sturdy wire fencing with a metal gate, covered on top to protect from predators. I hadn't used it since moving in, but it was still in good condition. I spent a weekend reinforcing it, adding a new lock to the gate and clearing out the old hay. Then I set up a new security camera system, this time hiding the cameras in trees and bushes where they wouldn't be easily spotted. My plan was simple: catch someone in the act of trespassing or vandalism, get clear evidence, and force the sheriff to take action. I didn't expect it would end with someone in the cage, but life is full of surprises. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. 3 days after setting up the cameras, my phone alerted me to motion on the property at 5:30 a.m. I checked the feed and saw Diane herself, bolt cutters in hand, approaching my fence line. I pulled on jeans and boots and headed out quietly, circling around through the trees to approach from behind. The sun was just starting to rise, casting long shadows across the field. Diane was so focused on cutting my fence that she didn't hear me coming. "Need help with that?" I asked, standing about 10 feet behind her. She jumped like she'd been shocked, dropping the bolt cutters. "You startled me," she said, quickly recovering her composure. "I'm just checking the fence line for safety issues." "With bolt cutters? At 5:30 in the morning?" I gestured to the cutters on the ground. "That's my fence you're damaging." "Again." "I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to sound confident, but her voice wavered. "I have it on video, Diane. Just like I have videos of the other times my property has been vandalized. The sheriff might not care, but I'm sure the county prosecutor will be interested." She switched tactics immediately. "The HOA has very good lawyers, Mr. Mitchell. This will not end well for you. I'm not the one trespassing and destroying property." I picked up the bolt cutters. "These look expensive. Custom grips." "Those are mine," she snapped, reaching for them. I held them away. "Evidence of attempted vandalism. I'll be keeping these." That's when Diane made her biggest mistake. She shoved me hard, trying to grab the bolt cutters. I stumbled back, dropping them, and she immediately went for them. "You're assaulting me now?" I said, pulling out my phone. "That's going to look great in court." "Give me my property," she shouted, all pretense of civility gone. "You have no right to be here." The irony was completely lost on her. "This is MY land, Diane. You have no right to be here. And now you've assaulted me and attempted to vandalize my fence. I'm making a citizen's arrest until the sheriff arrives." She laughed in my face. "You can't arrest me. Do you know who my husband is? He's a judge." That explained a lot about why the sheriff hadn't been helpful. "I don't care if your husband is the president. You're trespassing and you assaulted me. Now you can either wait here nicely until the sheriff arrives, or I'll have to contain you." "Contain me?" She was almost hysterical now. "You touch me and I'll have you arrested for assault." I sighed. This wasn't going according to plan. I just wanted her to wait while I called the sheriff, but she was becoming more agitated. When she suddenly bent down and grabbed a rock, I knew things were about to get worse. "Put that down, Diane. You stay away from me." She raised the rock, threatening. I made a split-second decision. The animal enclosure was about 50 feet away. If I could get her inside, she'd be contained safely until authorities arrived. "Look, let's both calm down," I said, backing up slowly. "Why don't we go sit down and talk this through? There's a bench over by the old goat pen." Surprisingly, she followed me, still holding the rock but seeming slightly less ready to throw it. I led her to the enclosure, opened the gate, and gestured for her to go in first. "You expect me to go in there?" "It's filthy," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It's just a place to sit and talk until the sheriff comes. Unless you'd prefer to wait in the sun?" She hesitated, then stepped inside. The moment she did, I closed the gate and locked it with the padlock. Diane's face went from confusion to rage in an instant. "What are you doing? Let me out of here immediately." "I'm containing you until the sheriff arrives. You assaulted me and were threatening me with a rock. This is for both our safety." I stepped back as she rattled the fence furiously. "You can't do this. This is kidnapping. I'll have you arrested. It's a citizen's arrest and I have video evidence of your trespassing, vandalism, and assault." I held up my phone. "I'm calling the sheriff right now." I made the call, explaining that I had detained a trespasser who had assaulted me and attempted to vandalize my property. The dispatcher said they'd send someone out, but it might be a while. For the next hour, I sat on a stump about 15 feet from the cage, watching as Diane cycled through rage, threats, pleading, and finally sullen silence. She tried calling someone on her cell phone, but apparently couldn't get reception, one of the charms of my rural property. "My husband will destroy you for this," she said for perhaps the 20th time. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Protected my property from someone who's been harassing me for months? Yes, I know exactly what I've done." Harassment? We were using an established trail. On private property without permission. After being told repeatedly to stop. That trail has been used by Whispering Pines residents for years. I'd had enough. "Diane, do you know when that trail was first created?" She crossed her arms. "Long before you got here. It was started 3 years ago when your development was built. The construction crews used it as an access path without my grandfather's permission. When he confronted them, do you know what happened?" She didn't answer. The construction foreman apologized and promised to restore the land when they finished. But then residents started using it and my grandfather was too sick to keep confronting people. That doesn't make it a public trail. It makes it trespassing that went unchallenged because an old man was too ill to fight back. That seemed to quiet her for a moment, but only a moment. "If that's true, why didn't he put up a fence?" she demanded. "Because he was dying of cancer and couldn't maintain his property anymore. Does that make it okay to steal from someone who's too sick to stop you?" For the first time, Diane looked uncomfortable rather than angry. She sat down on the small bench inside the enclosure, her yellow athletic outfit bright against the weathered wood. "I didn't know he was sick," she said finally. "Would it have mattered?" She didn't answer. The sun was getting higher and it was warming up. I got a bottle of water from my porch and offered it to her through the fence. She looked at it suspiciously. "It's just water, Diane. It's going to get hot today." After a moment she took it. "How long are you going to keep me here?" "Until the sheriff arrives. I called over an hour ago." "They're not coming, are they?" For the first time she sounded uncertain. "Why wouldn't they come?" "Because." She trailed off, taking a drink of water. "Because your husband would tell them not to?" I finished for her. She didn't confirm it, but her expression did. Another hour passed. The temperature was climbing, and Diane was clearly getting uncomfortable in the sun. I moved an old patio umbrella over to provide some shade. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked suspiciously. "Because I'm not the monster you think I am. I just want to be left alone on my own property." She was quiet for a long time after that. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, less entitled, more human. "I've lived in Whispering Pines for 3 years," she said. "Before that, we lived in the city. I'd never seen stars like the ones out here. Never heard such silence." She looked around at the trees, the distant mountains. "I walk that trail every morning because it's the most beautiful part of my day. There are public trails in the national forest just 2 miles down the road," I pointed out. "With better views than my cow pasture. Those are always crowded. And they don't have the creek." I understood more than I wanted to admit. The creek was my favorite part too. "That doesn't make it okay to trespass, Diane. Or to vandalize my property when I asked you to stop." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't vandalize anything." "So those bolt cutters just magically appeared in your hands at dawn?" That was the first time," she admitted. "I was angry because you blocked access." "And the spray paint on my cameras? The gate in the creek? My smashed mailbox?" She shook her head. "That wasn't me. But..." She hesitated. "I may have complained to some people about you blocking the trail. My husband's friends can be overzealous." I believed her oddly enough. Diane seemed like the type to delegate the dirty work. "So you didn't do it yourself, you just had others do it for you." She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Another hour passed. Still no sheriff. Diane was getting visibly anxious. "No one's coming, are they?" I said. "My husband's out of town at a conference," she admitted. "He's not answering his phone." "And the sheriff?" "Would normally do what your husband tells him to," I finished. "But without instructions, he's not sure what to do about this situation." She nodded reluctantly. "So we're just going to sit here all day?" I considered my options. The situation had already gone far beyond what I'd planned. I had video evidence of her trespassing and attempting to vandalize my fence. I even had her admitting that she'd complained to people who then damaged my property. "I'll let you go on 2 conditions," I said finally. She straightened up. "What conditions?" "First, you sign a statement admitting you were trespassing and attempted to vandalize my fence." You want me to confess to a crime? Absolutely not. It's that or wait for the sheriff who apparently isn't coming. She thought about it. What's the second condition? You and the HOA acknowledge in writing that there is no easement across my property, and you'll stop using it as a trail. She laughed bitterly. The board would never agree to that. Then I guess we'll wait for the sheriff. The standoff continued. By noon it was hot, and Diane was visibly wilting in her yellow athletic wear. I'd refilled her water bottle twice and brought out a sandwich, which she'd reluctantly accepted. Can I at least wait in your house? She asked. It's getting really hot out here. The house my grandfather built with his own hands? The one on the property you've been trespassing on for years? That house. She had the grace to look embarrassed. By 2 p.m. Diane's perfect blonde bob was wilting, and her yellow outfit had sweat stains. She'd been checking her phone constantly, but apparently still couldn't get reception. What if? She started then stopped. What if I personally agreed not to use the trail? Without involving the HOA? That's a start. What about your husband's overzealous friends who vandalized my property? She winced. I can't control what other people do. But you can stop encouraging them. She nodded reluctantly. Fine. I won't complain about you anymore. And the written acknowledgement of trespassing? I can't admit to a crime in writing. I'm on the library board for God's sake. I had to laugh at that. So it's okay to commit the crime, just not to admit it? That's not what I meant. She rubbed her forehead, leaving a smudge of dirt. The perfectly put-together HOA queen was starting to come apart at the seams. What if? She hesitated. What if I personally compensated you for the damage to your fence and gate? And the mailbox and cameras? Now we were getting somewhere. That would be a start. And in exchange, you let me out and delete the videos? No deal on deleting the videos. Those are my insurance. She thought about it. What if I could get the HOA to build a public walking trail around the perimeter of Whispering Pines? It would be even longer than cutting through your property. Better views too. That was unexpected. You could do that? I'm the president. And my husband owns the construction company that would build it. Of course he did. You think the other residents would go for it? If I say it's a security enhancement and property value improvement? Absolutely. That's HOA language for, you have no choice but to support this. I had to admire her honesty if nothing else. In the end we reached an agreement. Diane would personally pay for all damages to my property, a total she visibly flinched at when I listed everything that had been vandalized. She would also champion a new public walking trail that didn't cross my land, to be completed within 3 months. In exchange, I would let her out of the cage and not press charges for trespassing or attempted vandalism. I would keep the videos as insurance but wouldn't share them unless she broke her end of the bargain. We wrote it all out on the back of an old feed store receipt, the only paper I had handy, and both signed it. As I unlocked the cage, Diane looked more humble than I'd ever seen her. Her yellow outfit was dirty and wrinkled, her perfect hair a mess, and her designer sneakers were covered in dust. I didn't know about your grandfather, she said quietly. I'm sorry he was sick. Thank you, I said, surprised by her sincerity. My husband and I moved here because it reminded me of the farm where I grew up, she continued. I guess I got a little carried away with trying to make everything perfect. A little? She actually smiled at that. A lot carried away. Power corrupts, right? As she walked back toward Whispering Pines, she turned once more. You know, if you ever wanted to allow a private trail through your property, with proper permissions and maybe some compensation, we could talk about it. The creek really is beautiful. Maybe someday, I said. But not because you forced me into it. She nodded. Fair enough. True to her word, construction on the new Whispering Pines Nature Trail began 2 weeks later. Signs went up announcing it as a community enhancement project spearheaded by HOA President Diane Wilson. The trespassing on my property stopped completely. My repaired fence remained intact, my new cameras undisturbed, and my gate stayed on its hinges. 3 months after our cage standoff, the new trail opened with a small ceremony. From my porch I could see Diane cutting a ribbon, now back to her perfectly put-together self. But when she caught sight of me watching from a distance, she gave a small, acknowledging nod. A week later, I found an envelope in my newly replaced mailbox. Inside was an official easement proposal, offering a substantial yearly payment for limited access to a narrow path along the creek, with strict rules about usage and maintenance. It was signed by Diane and included a personal note. Your grandfather built something worth protecting. I respect that now. This offer stands if you're ever interested, but no pressure and no hard feelings if you're not. Either way, consider this a genuine apology for my behavior. Diane. I haven't decided whether to accept the offer yet. Part of me still resents the months of harassment, but another part understands loving the land enough to fight for it. That's exactly what I was doing after all. Sometimes I walk down to where the trail used to cut across my property. The grass has grown back now, erasing the signs of trespassers. The creek still bubbles over rocks, deer still come to drink at dawn, and the pine trees still whisper in the breeze. This is what my grandfather protected for 30 years. This is what I protected by standing my ground, even when it meant putting the HOA queen in a cage on a hot summer morning. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would lock someone in a cage. But I also never thought I'd be the kind of person who would forgive them afterward. Life on the ranch has taught me both. As for Diane Wilson, she's still the HOA president, still organizes community events, and still walks every morning in her bright yellow athletic wear. But now she walks on the official Whispering Pines Nature Trail, and when we happen to see each other in town, we exchange civil nods. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't have to mean staying enemies forever. Sometimes it just means earning respect on both sides. And if you're wondering, yes, I still have those videos saved on 3 different devices and a cloud account. Trust is good, but evidence is better. My grandfather taught me that too. The old animal enclosure is still there, though I've converted it into a chicken coop now. Every morning when I collect eggs, I smile a little, remembering the day the HOA queen sat inside, learning a lesson about respecting other people's boundaries. Some lessons are harder than others. But in my experience, those are the ones that stick with you the longest.